There's a reason so many men feel lost today, but it's not the reason you think. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. It's not even a lack of ambition. The truth is far more complicated and far more fixable. If you're in your 20s and you feel like you're drifting through life without a compass, like everyone else has figured something out that you haven't, like you're supposed to be somewhere, but you have no idea where that somewhere is, then this video is for you. Because what you're experiencing isn't a personal failure. It's a predictable response to a very specific set of conditions that our generation is facing for the first time in human history. And once you understand what those conditions are, you can start to do something about them. Let's start with the first reason: too many choices and no direction. You've probably heard about the paradox of choice. The idea that having more options doesn't make us happier, it makes us more anxious. But it's not just about picking a brand of cereal, it's about your entire life. You can study anything, you can live anywhere, you can build any kind of career, you can reinvent yourself at any moment. And that sounds like freedom, but it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like standing at a crossroads with 1,000 paths stretching out in front of you, and no map to tell you which one leads somewhere worth going. The ancient Stoics had a phrase for this. They said that if a man doesn't know which port he's sailing to, no wind is favorable. In other words, all the opportunity in the world means nothing if you don't have a direction. And the problem is that our culture tells us we should keep all our options open. Don't commit too early. Don't close any doors. But that advice, while well-meaning, leaves you paralyzed, because direction requires decision. And decision requires letting go of other possibilities. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies show that people who have too many choices experience more regret, more second-guessing, and less satisfaction with their decisions. So if you feel stuck, it might not be because you lack options. It might be because you have too many. The second reason is social media comparison. And yes, you've heard this before, but let me explain it in a way that might actually help. Social media doesn't just make you compare yourself to others. It makes you compare your internal experience to everyone else's external highlight reel. You see someone's vacation, their promotion, their relationship, their body, their confidence, and you compare that polished, curated image to the messy, uncertain, unfiltered reality of your own life. The problem is that you're comparing two completely different things. You're comparing how you feel on the inside, with all your doubts and fears and insecurities, to how someone else looks on the outside, with all their doubts and fears carefully hidden. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said that we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about them. Social media amplifies that suffering because it constantly feeds you judgments. It tells you that you're behind, that you're not enough, that everyone else has it figured out, but they don't. They're just better at pretending. And the more time you spend in that world, the more distorted your sense of reality becomes. Cognitive behavioral therapy teaches us that our thoughts shape our emotions. And if your thoughts are constantly shaped by comparison, your emotions will be constantly shaped by inadequacy. The third reason is a lack of mentors or guidance. Previous generations had clearer pathways. You followed in your father's footsteps, or you apprenticed under someone in your community, or you had elders who had walked the road before you and could tell you what to expect. But that structure has largely disappeared. Most men in their 20s don't have a mentor. They don't have someone older and wiser who takes a genuine interest in their development. And without that, you're left to figure everything out on your own. You're reverse engineering adulthood from YouTube videos and Reddit threads and trial and error. And that's exhausting. The ancient philosophers understood the importance of guidance. Seneca had his letters to Lucilius. Marcus Aurelius had his teachers, Socrates had his students. Wisdom was passed down through relationship, not through information. But today, we have more information than ever and less wisdom, because wisdom isn't just knowledge. It's knowledge applied in the context of a life. And you can't get that from a podcast or a book alone. You need someone who knows you, who sees your potential, and who can help you navigate the specific challenges you're facing. Without that, you're sailing blind. The fourth reason is economic expectations versus reality. You were probably told that if you worked hard, got good grades, went to college, and did everything right, you'd be rewarded with stability and success. But the reality is that the economy has changed faster than the advice. Housing is more expensive, jobs are less secure, wages haven't kept up with the cost of living. And the traditional markers of adulthood, like owning a home, getting married, starting a family, feel further out of reach than they did for previous generations. This creates a psychological dissonance. You feel like you're failing, even though you're doing everything you were told to do. And that dissonance breeds frustration, resentment, and a sense of being lost. The Stoics would remind you that you can't control the economy. You can't control the job market. You can't control the circumstances you were born into, but you can control how you respond. And part of that response is adjusting your expectations to match reality. Not lowering your standards, but being honest about what's actually possible and what's not, because clinging to outdated expectations will only make you bitter. The fifth reason is emotional suppression. Men are still taught, either explicitly or implicitly, that emotions are weakness, that you should toughen up, push through, and not talk about what you're feeling. And so you learn to suppress. You learn to ignore the signals your body and mind are sending you. You learn to keep moving even when you're exhausted, anxious, or depressed. But suppression doesn't make emotions go away. It just makes them come out sideways, as irritability, as numbness, as self-destructive behavior. Modern psychology is very clear on this. Emotional avoidance is one of the strongest predictors of mental health problems. When you don't process your emotions, they build up, and eventually they overflow. The Stoics weren't about suppressing emotions. They were about understanding them. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about his own struggles, his own frustrations, his own fears. He didn't pretend they didn't exist. He examined them. He questioned them. He learned from them. That's the difference between suppression and wisdom. Wisdom doesn't ignore emotions. It integrates them. The sixth reason is overstimulation and dopamine burnout. Your brain wasn't designed for the level of stimulation it's getting. Every notification, every scroll, every video, every game, every song, every message, it all triggers a little hit of dopamine. And over time, your brain adapts. It becomes less sensitive. You need more stimulation to feel the same level of satisfaction. And so you end up in this cycle where nothing feels rewarding anymore. You can't focus. You can't sit still. You can't enjoy simple things. Everything feels flat unless it's intense. This is a real neurological phenomenon. It's not a moral failing, but it does have consequences. When your dopamine system is fried, you lose motivation, you lose clarity, you lose the ability to pursue long-term goals because your brain is constantly seeking the next quick hit. The ancient philosophers didn't have smartphones, but they understood distraction. They understood that a mind constantly pulled in different directions is a mind that can't think clearly. Seneca wrote about the importance of solitude, of quiet, of stepping away from the noise, because wisdom requires space. And if your life is nothing but noise, you'll never hear yourself think. The seventh reason is that you have no clear idea of what a good life actually is. You've been given a lot of goals. Make money, get in shape, build a career, find a partner, travel, be successful. But nobody's really explained what all of that is for. What's the point? What does a good life actually look like? And without a clear answer to that question, You're just chasing things because you think you're supposed to. You're checking boxes without knowing why the boxes matter. The Stoics had a very clear idea of what a good life was. It was a life of virtue, a life of wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. It was a life where you acted in accordance with your values, where you contributed to your community, where you faced challenges with dignity. It wasn't about wealth or status or pleasure. It was about character. And that gave them a North Star, a way to evaluate their choices, a way to know if they were on the right path. But most men today don't have that. They have vague aspirations and cultural scripts, but no real philosophy. And without a philosophy, without a clear sense of what you're aiming for, you'll always feel lost. So those are the 7 reasons. Too many choices, social media comparison, lack of mentors, economic expectations versus reality, emotional suppression over stimulation, and no clear idea of what a good life is. If you're finding value in this video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button. It helps more people find this content. And if you have thoughts or experiences you'd like to share, drop them in the comments. I read them, and I think this kind of conversation is important. This is a growing community of people who value clarity, calmness, and ancient wisdom. And I'm glad you're here. Now, let's talk about how to fix it. Because understanding the problem is only half the battle. The other half is taking action. But here's the thing. The action you need to take isn't dramatic. It's not about overhauling your entire life overnight. It's about making small, deliberate changes that compound over time. So, let's go through them. First, reduce chaos before adding change. Most people try to fix their lives by adding more goals, more habits, more routines, more productivity hacks. But if your life is already chaotic, adding more just makes it worse. The first step is to simplify, cut out the noise. Unfollow accounts that make you feel bad. Delete apps that waste your time. Say no to commitments that don't serve you. Create space. Because you can't build anything solid on a foundation of chaos. The Stoics called this subtracting the unnecessary. Seneca said that it's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. So stop wasting it. Protect your attention, protect your energy, protect your time. Once you've reduced the chaos, you'll have room to build something better. Second, build a simple daily structure. You don't need a perfect morning routine or a complicated system. You just need a few anchors, a consistent wake-up time, a moment of reflection in the morning, some form of movement, a clear work block, time to wind down at night. That's it. The goal isn't to optimize every minute. The goal is to create predictability, because predictability reduces decision fatigue. It reduces anxiety. It gives your brain a framework to operate within. And when you have that framework, everything else becomes easier. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. But you can't find the way if you're constantly reacting to chaos. Structure gives you the stability to respond instead of react. Third, strengthen your mind with reflection and emotional understanding. This is where the real work happens. Set aside 10 minutes a day to write, not to post, not to share, just to think on paper. Ask yourself questions. What am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling it? What triggered it? Is this thought helping me or hurting me? This is basic cognitive behavioral therapy. You're learning to observe your thoughts instead of being controlled by them. You're learning to separate facts from interpretations. And over time, this practice builds emotional resilience. It builds self-awareness. It builds the ability to navigate difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them. The Stoics did this constantly. They journaled, they reflected, they questioned their own assumptions, and that's what made them wise. Fourth, choose one direction instead of chasing passion. Forget about finding your passion. Passion is a result, not a starting point. Instead, pick something that seems interesting, that has potential, and that you can commit to for at least a year. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be a direction. Because once you start moving, you gain information, you learn what you like and what you don't. You build skills, you meet people, you create opportunities. But none of that happens if you're standing still, waiting for clarity to strike. The Stoics believed in action. They believed that wisdom comes from doing, not from thinking. So pick a port, set your sail, and start moving. You can always adjust course later. Fifth, seek real guidance, not gurus. Find someone who's a few steps ahead of you. Not a celebrity, not an influencer. Just someone who's living a life you respect and who's willing to share what they've learned. This could be a co-worker, a professor, a family friend, a coach. It doesn't matter. What matters is that they know you and that they care about your growth. Ask them questions, ask for feedback, ask for perspective. Real mentorship isn't about hero worship. It's about relationship. And if you can't find a mentor in person, find one in books. Read the Stoics, read the great thinkers, have conversations with them through their writing. It's not the same as a living mentor, but it's better than nothing. Sixth, make your body an ally. You can't think clearly if you're exhausted. You can't manage emotions if your nervous system is fried. You can't build a good life if your body is falling apart. So take care of it. Sleep 7 to 8 hours. Move your body every day. Eat real food most of the time. Limit alcohol. Limit caffeine after noon. These aren't complicated, they're just basic. But basic doesn't mean easy, it means foundational. The Stoics understood that the mind and body are connected. Seneca wrote about the importance of physical health. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the need for rest. They knew that you can't separate mental clarity from physical well-being, so treat your body like it matters, because it does. Seventh, create a life vision that is calm, achievable, and meaningful. Sit down and write out what a good life looks like for you. Not what Instagram says, not what your parents say, not what society says. What do you actually want? What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of relationships do you want to have? What kind of work do you want to do? What kind of impact do you want to make? Keep it simple, keep it honest, and then use that vision as a filter. When you're making decisions, ask yourself if this choice moves you closer to that vision or further away. This is how you build a life with intention. This is how you stop drifting. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature, living in alignment with your true self. And that alignment is what creates peace. Here's the truth. Feeling lost in your 20s isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that you're human. It's a sign that you're navigating a world that's more complex, more overwhelming, and more confusing than any generation before you has faced. But it's also a sign that you're paying attention, that you're asking the right questions, that you're not content to just drift, and that matters. Because the men who feel lost are often the ones who are searching for something real, something meaningful, something that actually matters. And that search, as uncomfortable as it is the beginning of wisdom. The Stoics believed that the obstacle is the way, that the challenges you face aren't interruptions to your growth. They are your growth. So if you're struggling right now, if you're confused, if you're uncertain, know that you're exactly where you need to be. You're in the fire. And the fire is what forges you into something stronger. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to take the next step, reduce the chaos, build some structure. Reflect on your emotions, pick a direction, seek guidance, take care of your body, create a vision, and then do it again tomorrow. Because that's how you build a life, not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small decisions, and over time, those decisions add up. They compound. And one day you'll look back and realize that you're not lost anymore. You're exactly where you chose to be. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What's one thing you're going to start doing differently? What's one area where you feel most lost? Let's talk about it. And if you're interested in more content like this, content that blends ancient wisdom with modern psychology, content that's calm, grounded, and real, consider subscribing. This is a community of people who are trying to build better lives, and I'm honored to be part of it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.